Hey, good morning everyone. Today is October 3rd. It's a Tuesday, and Susan and I are here in southern Connecticut, specifically in Stony Creek, out for a bike ride this morning. It's been absolutely beautiful here the last couple of days, so we're taking advantage of every bit of this weather. In today's video, I think I'm going to be talking a little bit about buying your first road bike and some of the process I went through when I did it. Hopefully I'll have some tips for you guys if you're in the same position of looking for a new bike or getting into the sport yourself for the first time. So stay tuned for this video, and thanks again for watching. Another beautiful day here in southern Connecticut, and this morning I think I'm going to be talking about buying your first road bike. Yikes, is that a topic that is very hard to start a conversation about, because there are just so many things to consider when you are out there in the market for a road bike. But I guess to begin with, if I use my own experience as kind of a model for getting into road biking for the first time or returning to it after a while. As I said, there's so many questions that you have in mind that it's hard to know where to begin. But I think for me, I first of all had the desire to start road biking again. So I knew that I was interested in the sport and the activity of road biking. So I guess if you had a checkbox list of items that you are going to be considering, I would guess the very first thing is that, yeah, you've got an interest in getting out on a bike. And if you do, good for you. Good for you. It's a great sport, wonderful form of exercise. It's also a great social activity too. But getting back to the bike itself, apart from wanting to get out on a bike, I guess the next checkbox item I would consider is your budget. I think you have to be realistic about the amount of money that you are both willing to spend and want to spend on a road bike. That really is going to set the parameters, if you will, for your decision making further down in this process. Personally, I started off thinking very low budget, primarily because I wasn't sure about whether or not I'm going to stick with the sport or get into the sport, or how much time I would devote to it. And it's interesting because I had met somebody riding one time, and we were talking about road bikes, and they told me, I guess there's some sort of axiom that says the amount of money that you're willing to spend on your bike is directly proportional to the amount of miles or kilometers that you're going to be riding. And I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, if you're going to be doing just short rides occasionally on weekends, there's no real need to spend a pile of money on a high-end bike with high-end components if that's going to be your involvement with the sport. But back to my particular situation, I thought back to what I spent for a 10-speed bike I had many years ago, and I know I spent at the time a good amount of money for the bike. In other words, I bought a good quality bike. So not knowing at all what the market is like and what you get for your money, I really didn't have a sense of what kind of a budget I should set up to satisfy my needs and wants with road biking. So if you're kind of in a similar situation, you're not really sure what you want to spend and what you'll get for that kind of money, if you come up with a number in your head, then the next checkbox item you really need to do is find a good local bike shop. And I'm not talking a big box store like a Walmart or something like that to consider buying a bike from. Go to your local bike store, local bike shop, talk to a salesman, talk to a technician about what interest you have in road biking, and have them guide you toward the kind of makes and models with features and options that are available to you, and then from there decide whether or not the money associated with those bikes is something you're comfortable with. Now, I will tell you that probably if you're going into a local bike store, a local bike shop, and you're going in there with the idea of not spending a lot of money, I would guess you're probably going to look at around $700 for a decent and a very good entry-level road bike. Road bike made by Trek or Specialized or someone like that. Now, I recently, or last year rather, took Susan through this same exercise when looking for a bike for her, and she did settle on a Specialized Dolce over a Giant bike, primarily because of the local bike shop that we went to. In other words, the Giant bike was offered from a sporting goods store, and they really had no support whatsoever. Technician and the salesperson that talked to us was the only one in the store that dealt with bikes. And I don't know whether or not they even had a service department. So anyway, and that is also another checkbox item for you. You're buying a new bike. It's going to need some sort of service eventually, and if you're unfamiliar with doing your own service, then you're going to want to deal with a local bike shop that's going to help you out with those items. So Susan walked out of the store with a Specialized Dolce, and that bike did run $750 or so and change, somewhere in that neighborhood. But she got a brand new bike, 2017, bought it in 2016, and it comes with complete service for 4 years, and that includes parts. Another checkbox item for you guys to consider. What happens if something breaks? How much is it going to cost me to get repaired? And who's going to do the repairs for me? So I'm starting to repeat myself a little here in talking about where you're going to buy that road bike from. The other checkbox item that you really need to make, and this is probably one of the more important ones, is you really want to test ride the bike. You want to make sure that the bike at a minimum fits you. Road bike fit is a big consideration when you're looking at a brand new bike or getting into road biking. You want to make sure that you're going to be comfortable on the bike that you end up buying. and that is a function of bike fit. The bike is going to have to be adjusted in terms of saddle height, saddle position, forward or back toward the handlebars, how high the handlebars are, and a lot of that is dependent on just how good a shape you're in physically. Whether or not you can, as example, handle a more aggressive riding style, if that is something that you're aiming for. So the size and the geometry of your bike is essential for your comfort in riding the bike, and it's essential for you developing, or having rather, a very efficient pedal stroke. As a quick example, if you were to buy a bike and the seat was set up way too low for where it should be, your legs are going to be bent quite a bit more than they should when pedaling, and not extended when pedaling. Therefore, you're not going to have nearly as much power if your saddle height was set correctly and you were able to push down through the pedal stroke. So let's back up a little bit and start at the beginning. What should you consider when buying a road bike? Well, first of all, budget. Second of all, where you're going to buy it. And third, what do you expect to get out of the bike in the long term? Now, going back to my particular example, buying this bike, I bought this bike 2 years ago and didn't know a damn thing about bike fit, riding position, clipless pedals, and the like. I focused in on one thing and one thing only: where can I buy a road bike that I felt comfortable would be a good bike for me at the cheapest possible price. I ended up going to an online store and bought my bike on the internet. The bike was delivered to me. There was some assembly required. Turns out that the bike did not shift correctly, even though I had prepaid to have the bike set up so that it would shift correctly, and consequently ended up taking it to a local bike shop, which cost me more money to have the indexing set up. Now, for me, it all worked out, but I will tell you that in terms of budget, ultimately, I spent as much money upgrading the bike in terms of handlebars, front fork. I went to a carbon fiber fork. I changed out the small chain ring, which was a 40 tooth, down to a 34. So I would end up with a compact gear set, crankset rather. And I found out that the cranks on the bike that I had were damaged at the factory, where I couldn't remove one of the cranks. So I ultimately bought a new crank set to replace it, rather than just screw around and try to fix what was broken. Plus, I put better tires on the bike and ultimately changed the wheels as well. So actually, in terms of my budget. I probably doubled my budget by the upgrades that I put into the bike. But for me, I think that worked well, because when I first started riding, I wasn't sure how far I was going to go. I didn't know anybody else that was riding to ask them questions about it. And I was quick to judge my local bike shop only because when they told me the cheapest bike they had in the shop was right around $800 at the time, I thought, okay, I can do better than that elsewhere. But ultimately, the lesson is you do get what you pay for. And as far as I'm concerned, even a very inexpensive bike like I have, that I learned to work on myself, works phenomenally well for me. It's only a 7-speed, but it shifts flawlessly. It's smooth as butter. I did have a bike fit on this bike and discovered that. I probably should have had a bike with less of a reach, so I changed out to the shortest stem I could get for the bike and made an adjustment on that basis. So if you're out there looking for a new bike, or thinking about getting into road biking for the first time, and you have no one really to help you, guide you along, my major suggestion is go to a local bike shop, and they're the ones that will really help you and really guide you to making the right choice for yourself. As far as I'm concerned, what I did worked for me, but I would not recommend it for anybody else. Don't go out to the internet and get yourself a bike. Yeah, you'll buy a cheaper bike, but you'll end up probably replacing most of the components, and you won't be as happy as buying a bike that has good components on it, service from a local bike shop, and that's really the way to go. So thanks for watching this video this morning. Click on my globe and subscribe if you like, and share if you like, and if you like, please place some comments down below. Thanks again for watching, and look for new videos coming out soon. Thanks again.